Welcome, everyone, to today's episode. And my goodness, I am going to absolutely enjoy having this conversation with my guest today. Although he's in the registered club industry, our paths haven't crossed in business, but they certainly have through this amazing book. And we're not only going to talk about his journey in the registered club industry, but more importantly, about this book. So let me just give you a little bit of a brief overview of Peter Norris, and then we're going to get into some nitty-gritty questions. Peter Norris is not your ordinary CEO, the head of Club Corowa, a multi-million-dollar venue that employs more than 100 staff. He's also a world-class athlete who's won bronze in the Obstacle Racing World Championships. I'm going to learn more about that. And multiple national bodybuilding titles. And he's the son of one of Australia's most notorious bank robbers. Refusing to follow in his father's footsteps, Peter broke free from his shadowy past and forged a bright future. Welcome, Peter. Thank you so much for joining us today in this episode. I can't wait to learn about all the facets that you've had in your life. But, that first point there about breaking free from your father's shadow. And as a child, how did you find the resilience and hope within to break that journey that was before you? Because we hear this word about resilience so much today. And, are the younger generations, are they as resilient as they were in the past? Because, the other generations, particularly pre-veterans, have been through, depression and wars, etc. But Peter, yours has been a really unusual journey with having this notorious bank robber as a father and as a father figure. So, love to hear more.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, and really appreciate having you on your podcast. It's always good to chat, and this synergy between my story, my childhood story, and what I do now. And there's as we'll get to it, there's some pretty clear links in the way that I lead now that has come from all these experiences. So, to answer your question, it's not a difficult question. It's one that's can be complex though. I think the best way to answer it is I saw along the way I had all these experiences as a child with dad being a bank robber, and these experiences just kept building up. And the message that I was getting, even as a child, when I say as a child, I'm talking about from 6 to sort of 13, was building up for me a picture of what I didn't want to be. That is the best way to say it. So, and I know lots of people that had the experiences that I've had do tend to follow in those footpaths and have struggles to break that cycle. But for me, it just keeps solidifying to me what I didn't want. As much as I loved Dad and I admired him and he was a great protector, my gut through that whole time, my gut feel was, that's not me. I love him, but I don't want to become him. And that's been my driving force all of my life.
I've read, I've read, the book, and I've had to put it down many times because, to really just to have that emotional release, because, I've just gone back on a few pages again and thinking about the story where you tell, you're selling the newspapers there at the bottom, at Flinders Street Station steps, which for those that aren't here in Australia, this is our massive railway station with these magnificent steps down in Victoria. And you've got this pouch full of money from selling, which is, selling these papers, which you have to get back, and your father grabs it and says, we're going to go out for a feed, etc., etc. And your first thoughts are, gee, this is the realization that was my first paying job. And you've got that proudness of this, I've actually earned income, and now that's being taken away. So that must have been really hard. And because you're not old, like as you said, you're a kid.
I'm a kid. Yeah. Right. Yeah. No, exactly right. Yeah. And I do recall that one. And it was, a proud moment for me to obviously be able to earn money. And I knew that whatever I earned was to support my father and I for food and things while we're on the run. But also, I felt like I betrayed the trust of my employer at the time, and, we ended up stealing the takings that weren't all of mine. I was meant to get a commission, not the whole, obviously not the entire sales. So, but again, an experience for me that just solidified again that I didn't want to become that person, and I felt terrible, and all of these experiences
Mm.
just kept, as I said, kept piling up. So
Yes, yeah. But
yeah,
that as a child, you had your choices were limited because you were with your father, and therefore you had to go along with that. So, how
mm.
did that adversity shape you in your thoughts and behaviors when interacting with others as a child, and then later in the workforce? You know, your days there at school, being teased with kids living in a commission home,
Yeah,
there with your siblings as well. So, yeah, how did that go? You know,
mm.
yeah, it's hard. So I'll
Yeah,
let you share that.
yeah. I think what happened there, Michelle, is along the way. And look, I had some. We won't sugarcoat it. There were some really horrible experiences along
Mm,
the way. But I think what I was able to do, and there was times of darkness, and I learned a skill to keep finding light in that darkness, and I was always looking for the light or the positives, and even as a child. So and as you say, those adversity moments, some of those moments that were horrific, um, and so I was just becoming this little sort of reinforced child along the way who went, okay, and I got through that. Um,
mm,
so the next time that an experience came up that again that was confronting or horrible, I was like, okay, I know that I can get through this.
mm,
And if I take that into today, none of the experiences that you have at work as a CEO, and we
mm.
know our industry is challenging at times, and we do have days where everything's coming at us, and particularly now when we're dealing with a workforce that needs more than just to get paid, and that
Yes,
we can get into that discussion.
yes,
How challenging it is to lead a large team these days, and how much of our time is supporting people, in their own lives
yes.
and issues that pop up outside of work.
Mm,
Yeah, so to bring my childhood back into today, nothing that happens to me at work is anywhere near the challenges that I had as
yes.
a child. So,
Mm,
and the comments that I get from my team is Pete, we've never heard you raise your voice. We've never
mm,
seen you stress. So I keep this really calm, supportive team to the point where if we do have an issue with a staff member who looks like they might be disrupting that piece, or they come in and they're trying to bully, I mean, I
mm.
deal with that really quickly.
Yes.
And
Mm,
that's, such a, and look, most of us CEOs or leaders know that one bad apple can really undo a lot of great work.
mm.
So I deal with those people fairly but firmly.
Yes.
I am more than happy to remove that type of person from my team, and we encourage, support and care. We generally care for each other, my team.
Mm.
We're checking out for each other. We know who's not up and about and maybe having a bad time, and we just get around each other.
Yes. Yes.
And I think that's a strength that I've got from
Mm.
those experiences as a child, and it's a little bit of a superpower. I like to think of it as a superpower.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah. And it's so true. We've got to have this supportive community within our teams. For registered clubs, we do that so much for our broader community. But,
yeah,
once again, it just takes me back to that part of the book where you're talking about, you're there for that first time with your sisters Kelly and Tina.
mm.
Yes.
Yes,
And you're thinking about, well, what are the superpowers? You describe it as like it's going to a new playground at
yeah,
school, but you
yeah,
actually go home together, and you say, each sister has got their own dynamic, but yours was just sitting back and listening, and
mm.
you've just reinforced that again, what you're now doing as this grown adult, but it's
Mm-hmm.
the choices that you've made. So, at that point, it does come down to, well, what choices are you going to make for yourself, and how are you going to steel yourself when in that sense of protecting yourself to go forward. And that's what's so key in the workforce, isn't it, Peter, when you're talking about bullies, and oh my gosh, there are, and there's those bullies and there's the naysayers, and they get into any organization, they're just like this rotting piece of fruit, and they
Yep,
just want to upset everybody. And too
yep,
often we see businesses just tolerating it because, oh well, we've got
certainly.
nobody else, the pressure's on, we're just gonna, and you think you're doing so much more damage. And
Yeah,
as you rightly said, got to get it in, nip it in the bud, move them on. Because some people just carry baggage from life
Yep.
and from other work
Yep.
experiences. But
Yep.
why destroy your beautiful space that you've
Yeah.
created for your team?
Yeah. Yeah. And I've worked, and my team have worked really hard over 7 years
Yes.
to get to where we are. And
Mm.
now, and when I first arrived here, it was me, and I'm like, I am going to change this culture, and we are going to work through this. And bit by
Yes.
bit, we took, I suppose we took that power of
Mm.
just being positive and caring, and we got through all the ones that were pushing against it, because
Yes.
they fight pretty hard.
Yes.
um, and to the point where I was contacted by another club last week, and I won't mention, who said, we are looking to change. Would you consider, leaving your current position, because we need a complete
Yes.
rebuild? We've been taken over by bullies and these toxic individuals, and it's going to take years to fix it.
Yes.
That's and I do enjoy that. I mean, I'm not considering I love where I work, but as you say, I still see so many examples of leaders who just don't deal with it.
Yes.
And it's, and my view is, if you can't deal with those things, you shouldn't be in the position.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's hard, it's a battle, but it's a long run as well.
It,
And we've seen it time and time again, not just in
it,
our industry, but across all organizations.
look,
You've just got to stick it out.
it is tough. And particularly, some of our clubs, like mine, is in a small community.
Yes.
So, you take someone's job away from them. And I don't do that lightly. I mean,
No.
it's their livelihood, it's their family's security, it's all those things. But there's always a bigger picture to that. And I go into the local supermarket, and those family members, all of them will be pointing at you, going,
Yes.
that's the person that sacked my mother. And it's, and it is tough.
Yes.
It's tough. But,
yes. Yeah.
the question I always ask myself and my team is, and this comes with those decisions or spending money. It's like, if this was your business, would you employ that person? Quite often it's surprising, because they go, oh God, no. Well, so why are you allowing them to work here?
Yes, exactly. That's right. And once again, it comes down, they're making a choice how they show up at work every day, and you've really got to stamp your foot on it. But it is harder in small communities because, as you rightly said, Peter, kids go to school, it's somebody's mother or wife or whatever it might be, or father, and you have to face them. But it's the whole group more than just that one individual. So we hear so often the term about history repeating itself, and that's just one of those things, don't we? We think, oh, well, that, they're in that situation, and we use that as an excuse. Well, people do, don't they? Well, I'm like this because of what happened to me. Now, you are a dad now, and you have had to handle how have you handled the challenges of growing children, from that moment? And have they, I'd love to know about their thoughts as your children as well as your team, when they've actually read the book, because I'm sure they've heard stories as they've been growing up, and whether it's being other people sharing, oh, did you know what your dad did, etc., because I always love that in the playground. But what was the feedback from when they read that book?
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And even, there's some members of my team who knew nothing about my background, and that was something that I kept to myself, and really decided to put my story out to the world for a few reasons. But and we can get to that. But one of them was to help people find light in these dark times, and share my story and the power of choice and decision making. But so for my girls, I've got two daughters, 13 and 19, and they've read the book. And for one, the first thing they said was, "Oh my God, Dad! I had no idea that you endured those things." And oh God, and here we are whinging about that. We can't go to Mecca and spend $100 on makeup.
Well, they tell you they didn't, but they have. But
yeah, that's right. So it's good perspective for them, and it gives them a little bit of a bit of an idea of why I'm the person I am, and again, why I'm so calm and
Mm.
and protective. And
Yes.
I'm aware of, whilst I'm positive and and I love everything about life, I'm also aware that horrible things happen to people.
Yes.
So I bring that into my parenting, and and this is why, despite being busy at work and the book, I still coach my daughter's football team.
Mm.
She plays girls AFL football, so I still want to be involved and give two
Yes.
nights a week and every Sunday morning for football, and to show. And part of that giving back is not to teach them how to play. Of course, we'd like to win and like to play, but it's about becoming better people as we come out of
Yes.
that. So all the girls, we have discussions every game about respect and each other and our teammates and our parents and
Mm.
all those things. So so that's really important for me
Mm.
as well. For my team, again, as I mentioned before, it's given them a really great understanding of why I'm the calm person I am, and
Yes.
and literally to the point where in some venues it'd be catastrophic and everyone would be running around going, "Oh my God, this is the end of the world," and we're just like, "Okay, look, let's just grab a coffee. We'll talk about it.
Yes.
Walk out of these things. Okay, it's actually okay. We're all
Mm.
good."
Mm.
So that calm nature, and we know as leaders that if we're calm, our team remain calm. If
Definitely.
not,
Mm.
it can get a little chaotic. So so that again is just something that I've brought through.
Mm.
But it's also opened up so many different doors for my team to now feel less vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
So I've had, since my story's out, I've had lots of my staff walk into my office and go, "I need to tell you something," and it just comes out, and it's like, okay, so we have an EAP. Um, Professionally, I can't help you. I can be caring and understanding.
Yes.
I can't give you advice, of course, on what to do next.
Mm.
So let's get you some help. So there's those, and so we're finding a lot more conversations from people
Mm.
who previous to that, like a lot of us do, particularly us men, we bottle
Yes.
stuff down until we explode,
Mm.
which is not healthy. So yeah, there's absolutely a power in that, just even in my little micro environment,
Mm.
let alone what we can achieve, outside of Club Corowa.
Yes, yeah. And thank you for sharing that with us because, it's as though you're giving them permission to share what's happening in their life and perhaps even that voice, particularly for young men where they think they're going to be just like their father
Mm,
or their uncle or their grandfather, and that's that history repeating itself. But when
yeah,
they see you and have that conversation, Peter, they realize that they can break that
yeah,
cycle of violence or whatever it may be, or
yeah,
that feeling of not being good enough or
yeah,
that you're showing you can do that and you
yeah,
can believe in yourself, but it's surrounding yourself with the right people like you've
yeah,
done,
yeah.
still being conscious with the journey that you're on,
Mm,
but finding those right people. And
yeah.
sometimes they're not in your family, are they?
No, no,
No.
I've got people and men. I've got one particularly powerful mentor, who's lots of different things along the way. But even having that book in your hands, Michelle, that
Mm.
came because I had the right people around me.
Yes. Mm.
So and I had no idea how to write a book. But
Mm.
again, you put the right people around you, and but in terms of back to breaking the cycle, for me that was really a conscious decision. I had, my father, who grew up in boys' homes,
Mm.
Tamworth, and all these horrible places. And he was, clearly a criminal. His father was a criminal, uh,
Mm.
and his father was a criminal. We had this long line of criminal history, and
Mm.
and again, not something I knew as a 13-year-old when I made brave decisions. But had I not broken that cycle, I pass that on to the next generations,
Yes. Mm.
and that may just continue on forever. And as much as I love my older brother David, he didn't break the cycle. He's been, he's followed Dad's path, and
Mm.
yeah. So it's such a powerful thing to be able to break a cycle that's gone on for generations.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So it's been an amazing journey.
Mm. And I think it's just so wonderful. As I said, reading the book and then going back into parts of it, it's so heartfelt, but it's an easy read.
Yeah,
And we're
and
going to talk
yeah,
about that a little bit later on because,
yeah, yep,
you sort of, if we look at the pages and you think, oh my goodness, but it's good size print,
yep,
which is great as you
yep,
get older. But it's easy to read and it's heartfelt. And as I said, yes, there's many a time I've had to stop and have a bit of a cry, but
mm,
also it's not always a cry of pain. It's more of a cry of thinking
mm,
what you've had to do and endure, but how you've actually made those decisions to
mm,
go forward and the impact that it will continue to have with your
yeah,
children and with your team in particular,
yeah,
because I'm sure they tell others in the industry or those in the pub or their
mm,
family, oh my goodness me, you got to know about our CEO and
yeah,
what he's done and
yeah,
how he's helping us. You
yeah,
mentioned, Peter, about having a mentor, helping you read the book, but did you
mm.
find it hard to actually trust people, in the beginning there?
Yeah. I think the other skill that I've picked up along my life, Michelle, with all these diverse experiences and exposure to all of these different people, good and bad, is I've picked up a really good ability to determine good and bad very quickly.
Yes.
And in that gut feel, and it's not something I can explain. But even now, bringing it back into the workplace, even if my team are employing a casual bar person, I ask for 2 minutes just to sit down and just not interview questions, just to have a quick chat, and I get a bit of a general feel about them as a person. Because
Yes.
my view is that I will give a good person, a genuinely good person, a job over someone with a stacked resume any day. I mean,
Yes.
we can teach the skills,
Mm,
and as any other CEOs and leaders out there, we know we can teach the skills.
mm.
But a genuinely bad apple, it's really hard to unteach
Yeah.
that. um,
Yes.
so yeah, so as I said, even to this day, I'll sit down for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, whatever, and just have a little bit of a chat. And at times, I've walked away and my team have come back and said, "Oh, they've been working out of the clubs for 10 years." I'm like, "It's a no from me.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys, but keep searching." Yeah,
Yes, yeah, and I love that. I think as I said before, too often people just grab, and it doesn't matter what organization it is, but
yep,
we've seen a lot in the hospitality. The old, oh well, they've got a white shirt, black pants, they fog up the mirror when they walk past. Just
yep,
grab them because we're desperate. Open up
yeah,
that top drawer, but it
yeah,
just causes so many issues. And
yeah,
I just love Peter, and I know there's a few other CEOs who make that commitment of just going down and saying hi. Not always in the pre-employment, and so I think that's a great idea because
mm,
too often, I've worked with so many clubs, and you hear the new stuff, and they don't even know who the CEO is. They've
yeah,
literally got to look at the board. And I know you're bringing, you're running big businesses, but
yeah.
it's that connection. It is still about people. We're in the hospitality business, it's
It's
about that
crazy.
connection. And
Yeah,
yeah, it is having that bit of gut intuition going, there's something just not right. Yeah, they maybe,
yeah,
have the skills, have all that experience, but
mm,
does that make them the person that we need to fit into our beautiful puzzle here?
yeah. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you say, yes, we are busy running
Mm,
around day to day, but and I'll say this. Obviously, around us, technology's changed, everything's changed, but the
yes.
fundamentals of running a hospitality business have not changed.
That's
Uh,
right.
it's,
Yes.
it's it's people that will make or break us. And you think
Mm,
about what we do as a club. I'm no different to the club down the road.
mm,
They sell cold beer, they've got good
yes.
food,
Mm,
there's gaming machines, there's entertainment, there's all these other things.
mm,
I'm not special in what I offer as a product.
yes.
But what I can be special at is making people feel welcome,
Mm,
and have a team of people who their families comment that, oh my God, they're so well looked after. And,
yes. Yeah.
and these juniors even that go to their school and go, oh my God, you've got to come and work with us because it's so good and we're so supported. And so
Mm,
that's where we can be different.
mm,
And it takes time and energy for me to walk into my kitchen like I am at 4 o'clock today, pulling my back of house team together and just having a little chat and making sure everyone's okay. And
yes.
I mean, it's 15 minutes, but they walk away empowered,
Mm,
seen, of course. They get the opportunity to say anything they like without fear.
Yes.
That's the culture I want. It's like, tell me, if you think if I'm missing something or I'm not doing a good job, tell me, and I'll take that. If I
Yes.
disagree with you, I'll also tell you. But
Yeah.
let's just have that open dialogue, and it's so healthy.
Yeah. It is. It's becoming that workplace of choice. I love it how you said, they go back to school, or they'll tell their mates or their family or friends down the street, go to work the club. It's not because, oh well, you get paid. It's because of the environment, that culture, and it's that feeling of belonging. We want that for our members and guests, but you want that for your team, because when you've got that feeling of belonging, then they are part of you, aren't they? You're like just one. I won't say big happy family, because there's all, but you are. And we all have those. But it's that feeling of family, because not always do they have the family that supports them or goes on with ideas or encourages them. So if they get that from the workplace, whether it's from you directly or from the others, that to me is just a beautiful scenario. So
it is, and look, and a really good example, a recent example is we've just invested in this brand new staff space, and look, my board is no different than any other. It's quite diverse in demographic and thoughts and opinion. When I first tabled this project, there was a couple of board members who went, don't we pay them? Like, isn't that enough? And I'm just like, oh my God, you've just got to, it's time to move.
Yes.
It's like, oh, do we really need? I said, well, we spend all this money on restoration works and refurbishments throughout our building, and this is great. We need to look after our members, but what about our team?
Yes.
Anyway, we've got it through, and it's just been finalised, and it's just this beautiful space where there's workstations, there's showers, there's and there's a massage chair. Now it's a few grand, but I've got one staff member who's one of my supervisors in the bistro who comes into work an hour early because she can't afford to have something like that at home. And she'll come and sit in the chair and she's like, oh, Pete, this is the best thing ever. And it's just like, or, someone on split shifts who doesn't have to go home can stay here, grab a shower, just kick back and have a meal in a space that's really nice and inviting. And so it's these little things that you can do that in the scheme of things are not expensive, but just keep thinking about your people.
Gosh.
And they pay you back in spades.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Yeah. Look, I couldn't agree. You're just like music to my ears, Peter. I don't know how many really poor staff, you couldn't even call them staff rooms. They're literally junk rooms full of, old furniture that didn't want to be upstairs, pull it downstairs, fridge with rotting food in it. It's just appalling. And I've always said over this, you've got, if that's what if your team is seeing that's what you think of them, then how do you expect them to go upstairs or, out the floor and welcome and think about all these, if that's how they feel that you're treating them. So it doesn't have to cost you money. You're right. Have a shower. The massage chair is really good. Some clubs will have, a fridge and microwaves, and
we've got all that. We've got blenders if you want to make
this.
Blenders if you want to make a smoothie, because I've got some young people that are, gym fanatics. I'm like, there's some protein powders and all the stuff you need. Just make a smoothie. I've got some young, a group of young females who said, can we come here and like after work, can we just get ready here before we go out for the night? I'm like, absolutely. Like, come and get ready, do your makeup, and so.
And they can have a bit of a look. So other clubs that have got gyms, I was speaking to a club COO last week. She said we've put in practice now that, well, in place, not practice, but in place, that they've all got free membership to the gym, because we know that when people are working long hours, they're perhaps not eating correctly. They don't have that opportunity to work out like they do. So why not offer? It doesn't mean they're all going to take it up, but they've got to know that you're thinking about not only the financially, but about the physical state and mental state, because physical connects with that mental state, doesn't it?
Oh, massively. Just massively. I can't overstate how important having that physical fitness as well as the mental fitness is such a strong connection. So
It
Yeah.
is. It
So
is.
as you say, yeah, there's those little things that make such a difference. So
Yes, it,
yeah,
it does. So look, let's just get back to the book. I know, I'm loving
yeah,
this conversation. As I said right at the start, listeners, I said to Peter, we're going to go off on lots of different
yep,
tangents, but it was the book that really caught me, by surprise. I thought, wow, somebody who's in this leadership role, who's now admitting that their father was this,
mm,
really well-known bank robber,
yeah,
and how he's grown up. That was a big thing too. I sort of feel it would have been quite easy. Well, I'm just going to hide that part of my life. So,
mm,
what encouraged you to write and publish your story right now after
yeah.
all these years, Peter?
Yeah, and I mentioned before, having good people around us and a mentor, and my mentor is a well-known corporate speaker, public speaker, Mark Dobson, who does a fair bit of work, and he's a brilliant man, simple, but he's just this really beautiful, logical thinker who I love
Yes.
speaking to, and we speak on a weekly basis, and we were talking about a story, and I said, I'm thinking about writing a book. And as soon as that came out, he's like, okay, well, write it. Like, let's just do it.
Yes.
And I said,
Mm.
well, I don't know how to write a book, Dobbo. He's like,
Mm.
oh, well, I know someone who does. And um, so anyway, he connected me to an author and filmmaker you know, who, as I finished a chapter, the poor bugger, because I pour my heart and soul into a chapter, and I'm typing away and sometimes crying as I'm typing. And then I'm like, oh, thank God. And then I hadn't thought about that. Then I'm just passing that to him.
Yes.
And in conversations, finally, he's like, oh my God. And then I had to read your chapters, and I had to sit there at night and think about my children. And,
Mm.
and I'm like, oh, I never thought about that. I just thought, that's your problem now. I move on to chapter two. So yeah, but we had conversations about how much I would tell in my
Mm.
story, and my view on it was pretty much like everything else I do. If I'm going to do this, it's all in.
Yes. Yeah.
It needs to be authentic, and I don't want to keep too much out of my story. Yeah, if we're going to do this properly, and I wanted, and anyway, so, and again, I was asked why, like, Pete,
Yes.
why do you want to do this?
Mm.
And I said, well, I feel right now is the time that I'm ready to share my story, in the hope that it can help people navigate life in general. And it's not just people who've been through horrible experiences that
Mm.
I have. I think, having, as you've read it, Michelle, everybody, I would say every person I know is struggling with a choice of
Yes.
sorts.
Mm.
And I hope that just reading the story, will help people navigate a brave choice.
Mm. Yes.
I think most of us probably know the answer to our choices is just being brave enough to stand up and
Mm.
show just how powerful making the right choice can be. It's life changing. For me, it was absolutely life changing,
Mm.
and I was close to not making that choice, and my life would have been very, very different. Yeah, so in terms of the timing, I just felt I was ready to step out and
Mm.
be brave. And I know that not everybody will probably read my story and agree that it's something that should be told, but I don't care.
Mm.
If it helps a few people along the way, yeah, as I say, find light in that darkness, then it's worthwhile. And I didn't expect to be on a third reprint 2 months in, like we are at
Yes,
the
I was
moment.
going to
So
say.
it's gone a little crazier than I expected.
Which is fantastic. Actually, you've emailed through my beautiful EA Sarah, and the first thing she said when I said, she goes, have you got the book? Have you got the book? Because I've got to send it to her. And she said, oh my goodness. She goes, just from reading and seeing what Peter has done, she goes, this has got to be a movie. And you told about, you just said a moment ago, it is perhaps even a filmmaker there who's helped you with the book. Would that be something that, because even reading it, myself, I'm thinking, yes, you could definitely see this as a film.
Yes. Yeah. So to answer that question, yeah, currently the screenplay is being written for it.
Wow, that is so cool.
And that is really cool. And this is from, a filmmaker who has decided that he will put the next 3 months of his life away to write it.
Gosh.
Now, he's not getting paid by me to do that. He's just saying, I believe in this and we want to get it. I want to get
Mm.
it done. So that's exciting. So that's happening. And then, yeah, there's the audio book is, so I'm learning the business side of books at the moment
Yes.
because as I stepped into this space, I'm like, I don't really care if I don't really need to make any money out of it. So I
Mm.
just write it and I hope it reaches as many people as possible. And so then it's, an audio book company has picked it up. And fortunately, they've approved for me to go and read my own story, which is great.
Good. Yes.
So that'll be out later in the year. And so there's all these other bits and pieces happening
Mm.
around that, which is good. And some corporate speaking because I do enjoy a live audience just to try and get, and I do base my speaking around the power of choice and decision making
Yes.
and draw some things out of people. So I've done a little bit of that, and I've got a lot more coming in this year and next year. So, and that's where I see myself headed from here in space to talk about that, and even from the link between corporate and leadership, what I'm doing now, and intertwining my story into that is quite a powerful message.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And it's just so interesting. Here you are, you make this decision to write the book, and then it's like a juggernaut. It just
Mm,
it keeps moving through. And I
yes.
know myself, I do a lot of traveling on the road, going to regional venues, and I'm always listening to books. And
Mm,
at the moment, I'm listening to one, and it's Bill Bryson, and he
mm,
always writes some great, funny books. But some of his books are narrated by others, and this one
yeah.
is narrated by himself, the Thunderbolt Kid, and it makes such a difference. And it's not just him; there's lots of others that actually read their own books, and
Yeah.
it's always those additional comments, the gasp in your voice, that little bit of a chuckle that
Yeah.
makes it
Yeah.
your book. And
Yeah.
yes, so
Right.
I can't wait for it to come out onto that you can
Yeah.
listen to when you're in the car, which is fantastic. But while I'm going to be putting links in the show notes about where they can purchase the book from, but my listeners are probably thinking, I'm about to get out of the car. Where do I buy this book from, Peter? Before we continue on with more
Well,
questions.
yeah. So, look, if you want to go into bricks and mortar, Big W, QBD, Dimmicks, all those places, all the airports, a lot of us travel. So,
Yes.
your WH Smith, all of those airport shops, it's sitting
Mm,
there. If you want to jump online, I know Amazon, they're really quick. So, a friend of mine ordered, had it the next day. So,
mm.
really cool. Even Big W online, all of those places. So, and if anyone wants to ever engage and chat, my website, bankrobbersboy.com.au, you can just contact me personally through that. And even just to talk about leadership if you're having struggles, particularly any other licensed clubs,
Yes.
more than happy to have discussions with any of those leaders who might be facing challenges, particularly with bullying staff and how to deal
Mm.
with that. I do really enjoy that. So more than happy to share some time with people over those discussions. So,
Wonderful. Thank you. But as I said, I'll put it all in the show notes, but
yeah.
we've got a few more questions to go.
Let's
But I
go.
just wanted to cover that because yes, it's just so wonderful to hear that as you're progressing. It's not just a book. It's so much more
No.
than that.
Mm.
You've talked about the time, and it would have been a tough decision to actually
Yeah.
write that. So, what would you say to someone who's considering to write a story? I've written two books myself, but they're just been very much focused on the industry. And I know it puts a lot of effort into it. A lot of people,
Yeah.
they say they've got a book that they've written. It's been sitting in the bedside drawer,
Yeah.
or in the desk drawer for so long. But what advice would you have for them? Because you went through a publisher, some publish it
Yeah.
themselves. Yeah, is there any tips that
Yeah.
you'd like to share?
Yeah. And as you would know, Michelle, doing yours, there's a number of ways to look at solving that problem. And
Mm,
initially, I think you probably need to determine what you want to do with your story.
mm,
So for me, it was I wanted to get it out to as many people as possible, and that was it. I want as many people as possible to read it and to reach out. So yeah, from that, so other people I've spoken to said I really just want to write it, and I want it to be for my close friends and family. I don't necessarily want it
yes.
to get out to the world. So that's a different that's a
Mm.
different way. Yeah, but even the process of writing, as you know, is challenging. So I'd never written a book before, had no idea, and without some help, I would have literally got my laptop out, chapter one, and just started writing.
Yes.
But my editor, Luke Jackson, who's a filmmaker and author, he said, "Pete, let's spend some time." And this was the first couple of months. He said, "Let's really plan this out properly." And so once we finished that plan, I had everything I needed in chapter one was laid out, every story, and then obviously chapter two, all the way through for every single chapter, epilogue, prologue, all that stuff. So then the process of writing was so much easier because I had a plan.
Yes.
And you might know this, I often found, my chapter one was becoming chapter two, or I'd gone off on tangents and I'd go back to my plan, go, hang on, you got to pull this back, delete.
Yes.
So that was just invaluable. So I can't recommend planning enough because I'm a classic underthinker. I just do.
Yes.
So that was an experience for me. And then finding a publisher can be it can be hard.
Yes.
There's thousands and thousands of manuscripts hitting their desks and emails. And I was fortunate that I think we had a good title. The Back Was Boy was really good.
Yes.
So, we worked through that a little, workshop that, and had different sort of things that we thought were catchy. And I had that publishing offer within a week.
Wow.
But had that not happened, I had these other options to self-publish and all those other things. So, yeah. So, and then, and clearly, again, because I wasn't driven by making money out of this, I had contracts in front of me that I kind of went, well, I don't really care, so I'll just sign it. And then again, I had some help. Someone go, yeah, hang on a minute though. What if this becomes a movie? Do you want to give up movie rights for that?
Yes.
Well, probably not. He's like, well, they get them if you sign that. I'm like, oh, right. So all those types of, but at that point, I'm like, well, it's not going to be a movie. I'm just writing a book.
Yes.
So
yes. Yeah.
International rights, audio rights, all these other things that I had no idea about. So the commercial side, I've learned a lot about that, and to retain the importance of that to me, though, again, not commercially, was to retain the authenticity of my story. I don't want somebody to pick it up and bastardize it to a point where it's not my story anymore.
Yes.
So I've been really careful to protect that. And then of course, it's all of this stuff, how much time you put in telling your story, and going on the morning show and the project and all those things I've been doing recently, which just happened organically. I didn't have a publicist go and do all that. So for that stuff, it's just come. So I've been fortunate that the story has resonated, and I think the average number of books sold by an Australian author is low. It's like 500 or something. It's not very high. So for people, wanting to release their own story or their own book, you probably have to be realistic about what you might achieve too. And so that's important. And it's generally not something you're going to make money out of. So you need to have another reason behind it.
Yes.
But
and an income.
and an income, yeah. But the one thing that I will say a book does, it opens doors.
Yes. It starts that conversation, doesn't it?
It starts the conversation. And, and the best example I have of that is Jeff Harris, who's one of the founders of Flight Centre.
Right.
Read my story and invited me to his building, this Gate 8 in Melbourne that he's built, which is just this beautiful building, for a coffee, and then spent 3 hours talking with me about all amazing things that he's doing and how that I might be able to help in with some of his foundations and all these things. So, and I've got lots of examples of, the book just being a conversation starter or a book. And that's a really powerful thing to consider.
Mm. But what I've loved, as you shared that story, it's you went in there. I wrote a book, and then all of a sudden, somebody said, "Well, wait on, just don't sign that contract. Like, look a little bit more." And it's interesting. It's no matter how old, how experienced we are, there is always somebody out there that we can just stop and ask a question or listen because they've
Yeah.
been exposed to something else and they want to help us. And we see
Mm.
that with coaches, we see, but particularly in the leadership roles. And to me, that's wonderful because a lot of people go, "Oh, look, I know what I'm doing. It's fine." And then everything
Yeah.
unravels. So it's wonderful to hear that you're being
Yeah.
supported by others that want to know about you, but also to help you, not just take, but to
Yeah.
give. And
Yeah.
that goes into that role of being a leader and you being there, the CEO at Club Corowa, where
Mm.
those young people, well, all of them, all your
Yeah.
team are looking at you for that leadership. So can you just give us a little bit more of an idea of,
Mm.
because I know you did before we I put the camera on, about
Yeah.
how you got involved in the registered club industry, because so many use it, go into the hospitality industry. It's that first job out of school while they're at university, wanting to pay off the car,
Mm.
whatever it might be, or they've been out of the workplace for a long time, come back into it. And it's one of those jobs where I can pour a beer, I can do it. But
Yeah.
what actually got you into it? Because, here you are, you've had this journey through your earlier years of life, you've gone into different ways, but
Mm.
what got you connected with the club industry?
Yeah, so I completed a tourism and hospitality degree through La Trobe University, and at that stage, like a lot of us, I was just going, "Oh, well, I better get a degree. I don't know what I really want to do."
Hmm.
I wasn't particularly successful at school. I mean, I finished year 12, but I was really just a bit of a class clown and an idiot. So I was like, "Well, I better do something." I was working at wineries in Bendigo actually, and so obviously in the hospitality industry, and my wife and I at the time, we decided we'd go for this motel job at a licensed club, Thaguna Country Club, just outside of Albury. And we did that because we wanted to have children, and so we thought, well, that'd be a great environment because we can all work and live and at
Yes.
the same time and put some money away. And so we got that job. I went to Liverpool Catholic Club with Dave Vidler, interviewed me for
Yeah.
that role actually, and Dave's the CEO there currently, and at that time he was working under John Turnbull, who's been in the industry forever.
Mm.
And yeah, so we started working there, and as we started working, I started sending reports off to Liverpool about how well the motel, all these different ideas and things we could do to integrate the businesses a little bit better between the club and the motel. And then, as anyone who knows John or Dave, they're pretty laid back guys. So I think Dave actually rang me one day and goes, "Oh, you're giving us way more than our club manager at the moment. Do you want to have?" I think his words, literally words, "Do you want to have a crack at running the club as well?" So then I went, "Oh, absolutely, let's have a go." So that's sort of how the club industry started, and Dave and John, yeah, taught me everything I know from just to get started, and particularly gaming and the
Mm.
legislation and all the other things that we're exposed to. And then yeah, so that was really it. I spent some years there under their guidance, which was great. It's
Yes.
obviously a massive, successful club who
Mm.
they've done things really well, and they plan really well, and they make big, brave decisions at times.
Yes.
So it was good just to sit back and as we've said, even as a child, I'm good at sitting back and just watching and taking things in, and then I moved across to a smaller club along the Murray River, a little golf club, Howlong Golf Club,
Oh, yes.
and then to here. So it's really only three clubs that I've worked in over 20 years. So I tend to knuckle down and stay in a venue, and yeah, and I think the first time that I walked into Club Corowa, I saw all these signs everywhere, and club managers will know these signs. They're the no children ones with a big stop sign with a security guard, but they were everywhere, not just in licensed areas. And so my first day in the job, I walked around and picked them all up and threw them in the bin. and people were looking at me like, what are you, I sort of like, aren't we a community club? Like,
Club, yes.
are we, a family's not allowed, kids? Oh, no, they're noisy and they run around. I'm like, great. That's exactly what I want. So then, I spent the first few years developing a club that was for the community. And, where I've built big playgrounds and indoor play centres. We're about to next week start the construction of a $1 million mini golf course that will join our outdoor dining.
Gosh,
which is really great. And to be honest, it was tough because the older generation, the stalwarts of the club, looked at me and said, "You're ruining our club. Why are all these kids?" All of us club managers will know. What have you done to us? But eventually that noise dies down, and the financial results came with it, and people started to want to work here. And in those first 2 years, there's probably 40 staff that didn't last in those first 2 years.
Yes.
There was just some horrible things going on. Apprentices being locked in call rooms and all sorts of bullying. And so it was a tough 2 years for me in a small community. But again, I asked myself the same question. If this was your business, would you tolerate that?
Yes.
And if you can't make these decisions, step away for someone who can. And so I made a commitment to myself to stand up for those people that nobody else was at the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And 7 years later, we run, I've just got a team that I'm so proud of, who I no longer have to protect them. They protect it for me. And we have these amazing conversations, which we're having with somebody today about stepping outside of that and not being supportive and caring of everybody around them. So, just so proud.
Yeah, it's about believing in yourself, but it's about believing in others, Peter. I've always, my tagline for my business for 3 decades is, igniting the potential in your team. And it is so true, because not all of them see the what they've got inside them, do they? It takes others. And even if you look at your journey, with writing the book, that offhanded comment, "Oh, I'd love to write a book," which, just about everybody says, generally, "Oh, I'd love to write a book about something."
Yeah, I'm finding that out now that I've released mine. Is everyone comes like, "I read your book.
Yeah.
I want to write mine too." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm happy to help if I can."
Yes, yeah. But somebody still had to believe in you at Dobbo and say to you, "Well, then let's write it. Let's go," because otherwise it could still be sitting there in your drawer. You are right, with customers, we've now got 6 generations of customers. With registered clubs, we've also got a board, and and we want to make everybody feel that they've got a place and a space within our venues, because it's community. But it is about a community. And yes, we need younger people, because lovely, I was having a joke with the club the other day, and I was saying, Bob, who's been, one of the stalwarts of the club, is no longer spending, a certain amount of money at the bar, because he's gone from, maybe 8 schooners of beer to 3 lemon squashes and maybe 1 beer, because he's now in his 80s. But as lovely as it is, and we don't want to offend anybody, because the whole space is for everyone, but we need to be mindful of those generations coming through. And even though those little alphas that may not be passing money over to the counter, they are household influences. So how do they impact? And we all know we've got young children, whether the direct children or grandchildren. We all ask them, "Where do you want to go for dinner tonight?" Because if you've got a mini golf, you've got a playground equipment, let's go. They're going to be happy. We're going to be able to eat, and everybody's going to have a nice time.
Pretty simple, isn't it? Yeah. But back to just quickly identifying, that I suppose the diamonds in the rough too that we have. And, I've got a really quick story, which is great. And when I first arrived, not long after I first arrived, there's a man that worked here, and what you would call an Aussie battler.
Yes.
And I took the time to sit down with him, and I said, and he was a cleaner. I said, what's your story? What do you want? He goes, I'm just sort of getting through. And I said, yeah, but what do you want? He said, I'd like to be a duty manager one day. So, okay. I said, so, have you told him? No, he goes, no, I'm just a cleaner. I don't, I said, okay, well, I'll make you a commitment that if you give me your time to learn, and your commitment to that, and how about we try and work towards that? And there's going to be lots of steps along the way. You don't go from that to that, but you come and start working in the bar, and then I might work you in as this sort of big friendly giant. I said, I might have you as an RSA marshal sometime. So it took years, and it was only late last year that he's now a duty manager.
Wow.
And, his message to me was, my family is so proud of me. For him to be able to go home and tell his family that he'd made that journey for him was complete. And he's just such a loyal, amazing staff member. And I think we probably all have those people in our businesses that we just walk past every day.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not, you don't have to do it every day, but allocate some time to talking to your people, finding out their story, and what drives them, what they want. Because, as we know, I know now, talking to my team, that not everybody just wants to be given a pay rise every year.
No.
Some people value time with their family more than money. And
yes.
And it's really, this is the dynamic that we work with. So we have to get out of our offices and from behind our computers and talk to our people. And
yes,
I think that's just the strongest advice that I could give. And as you said before, we're in these little micro environments, but our industry is amazingly supportive. And pick up the phone. Like, there's so many managers I can pick up the phone to and just say, I don't know what to do about this, mate. And you'll have all this dialogue of, have you thought about? Oh no, probably not. And I get the same. And I think some of us don't realise that the resources we have out there to support and help. And sometimes our boards can be horrible.
Yes.
They don't get it sometimes, and despite the training and all the things that we put in front of them. Sometimes they don't understand that they run our club day to day.
Yes, yes. And I think, it's feeling comfortable by asking. And, when we look at the older generations, it's always been that if you ask, then it's a sign of weakness. You've just got to do it yourself. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, and so we had that in the back of our minds all the time, but we see more now, particularly with, Gen Y, but very much with Gen Z. It is about that group mentality. It is about these discussions. And we need, as, from older generations, is to stop and think it's not just about, it's not weak, it's asking them, it's finding out more about them, how you can connect with them. But, as you said earlier, Peter, it's not so much that, well, tell me if I'm doing something wrong, but tell me what else I could be doing, because we can all learn from each other, can't we? If you've got this blinkers on saying, oh, well, I know everything, or I've done this, and we've always, we thought, oh yes, I've heard that, been there, tried that. But actually open your eyes and go, you know what, we may have tried that before, but at that time we didn't have ABC in place. So let's have another go at it instead of just writing it off. I think to me that's what's so important. Do you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think most of us have got examples of that, but some really good ones recently. I'm planning a new kitchen build or a refurbishment, and now there's no way that I should be planning that. I don't work in there.
Yes.
I can go in there and pretend I know everything. I don't know where a stove or the fryers should go. I don't know.
Yes.
So if I don't engage, my team in that and say, you guys tell me what you want, we'll put a plan together based on that, and then we'll sit down, we'll talk through how that flows and all those things. But, again, I see too many times, particularly with architects, where they come in and give a club a set of drawings and you're just like, oh, yeah, that looks great, let's just go get it done. And then afterwards you have all these problems. It's like, well, no wonder, because you didn't engage your team, who will have seen the holes in all of that.
Yes.
They work in it day to day. And, so just so many times I've seen horrendous outcomes. And then we're talking about millions of dollars of money that's not mine. Not my
Yes.
thing.
And the team are looking at it as getting built going, this is never going to work. But they haven't been asked. So some of them will go, well, forget it. I'm not even going to put my hand up because they're not going to listen to me. Thank you so much for sharing that story about, your team member there who's now
Yeah.
going into that duty manager's role. But
Yeah.
I think, once again, it is somebody feeling comfortable that they can share what
Mm.
the dream is. And then by saying to them, well, I can help you to achieve that dream, but you've got to make that commitment as well.
Yeah. Oh,
And it's a
100%.
journey together, isn't it?
Yeah, I need some things from you too,
Yes.
and even, but even this week, I saw him yesterday. He's like, oh, you and I haven't had a catch up for a bit. I'm like, yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, we need to have catch up because it's just that. And it's just a general chit chat. How's your family? But
Yes.
now it's something that is like, we haven't done that for a bit. So it's time. I'm like, yeah, no, it is time. So,
Yes. Yeah.
um,
And once again, it's breaking that cycle
yeah.
because now he's showing his family what he's been able to achieve and how is that, what the difference that's going to make for his family, we don't even
Oh,
know at this point in time. It could be just like, what you were saying, you broke that cycle in your family. It could
yeah.
be something very similar to him, and that they can say, you just got to believe in yourself. But I've broken that cycle. This is what I
Mm,
can achieve, going from
yeah.
cleaner to this.
Yeah.
And what can you do? So
Yeah.
I have absolutely loved this conversation. I think we could go on for so much
Yeah.
longer, Peter, but
Oh, absolutely.
whether
Absolutely,
it's
Michelle.
our industry that we both love or whether it's this amazing book. So, listeners, you got to go out and grab it. It's called The Bank Robber's Boy. The author is Peter Norris, who I've been interviewing today. But before we finish up, Peter, I would just like to ask you I know you've shared his beautiful stories and, both at the club
Mm,
and through your life, but are there three tips or strategies perhaps that you could share with our listeners about facing adversity? Because life, it's not easy, and at
mm,
times, people will go through different things in life, but we hear about this word resilience, but it has to be more than that. Are there some tips or strategies that you can share with them? Particularly if they're in our industry, because we're dealing with all sorts of people that come in to our venues, whether they're working or whether they're our customers, about how
yeah.
they can build up that resilience without
Mm,
being a hard, horrible
yeah.
person on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, there definitely is, Michelle. I think, and this is a hard one for some people to confront, but you have to be able to make brave choices,
Mm,
and that is just number one. And look, I've been there. We've all been there, sitting in our chairs, going, "That person shouldn't be working here." As one example,
mm,
and you let it fester, and you let it go, and you let it go, and the damage continues, and you sit there uncomfortably, going, "Oh my God, I should have dealt with that." I mean, you just got to step up and make brave choices. And the more that you do that, like everything else in life, the easier it becomes.
mm.
Uh, and again, it's not easy, but and if you're struggling to make those choices, reach out to me, reach out to your own mentors or the people around you, and have those
Yes.
discussions. Don't, you're not on your own.
Mm,
But my club wouldn't be the way it is today without brave choices, and
mm.
making sure that those people, and the way that I think about it is, if you don't, how many other people's lives are negatively impacted by you not making that decision? And that's
Yes. Mm,
um, secondly, it's not specifically related to the industry, but physical fitness is everything. Uh,
mm.
and I do not take that. I do not have time stuff. That's, I call bullshit on that for anybody, regardless of what you're doing. I've written a book and been a CEO and a father and a coach, and I still manage to get to the gym 5 times a week. Um,
Yes.
and just the power in being physically fit, the confidence it gives you, because I've come from not being physically fit. I've
Mm,
been through both journeys, and just the clarity of thinking and the strength that gives you, just cannot overstate it. So, invest time into that.
mm.
And yeah, and thirdly, build your team. Sorry, when I say team, I mean build your network, your mentors.
Yes.
Get some good people around you is just so important.
Mm,
Um, and be careful who they are sometimes.
Yes.
And your gut will tell you who's right and who's not. But and it can be a small circle of people, but build that around you, because that's so powerful. And probably got 10 things, but that's, for me, the top 3. Yeah. So, but yeah, that right mentor, those people around you is just invaluable.
It is.
Cannot overstate.
No. Yeah. You can't. And I just think, oh my goodness, we didn't even get into the bodybuilding or this obstacle race world championships. I'll have to have you back again.
Yes. Yeah. But I think, all these topics we've spoken about, I think these should be things spoken more about at our conferences, our panel.
Yes.
Stuff like we touch on food cost and industry trends and blah, like great, but I think we need to have more of these discussions in our industry, and at some point. So
definitely, we've definitely got to have it. Now, have you got your book in front of you at the moment, Peter?
No.
Oh, well, I'll have to read it because I really wanted just to read it. It's the last page, but it's not giving away the story. And it's just a few lines here that I wanted to share with our readers before we finish today. You could say life dealt our family one certifiably crazy hand. There's no sugarcoating the crimes, the violence, or the brokenness, but we've shown glimmers of grit, love, and the power of the human spirit in our own weird ways. If you take just one message from the raw honesty of my story, let it be this: we all get the chance to rewrite our script, to find redemption. Our past doesn't have to dictate our future. Thank you so much, Peter, for joining us today. This is a beautiful book. You put your heart on the line here. You've shared stories that will impact so many that you may come across, or you may never know who they are. But it's knowing that is such a beautiful gift that you've given those in your local community and so much broader and globally. And I am just so glad that I've got a signed copy, because when you become this famous movie star walking down getting an Oscar, I go, I know this guy. He was on my podcast.
No, thank you, Michelle. It's a great chat. As you said, you could just keep going for hours, but there's heaps of things. But I really appreciate your time. It's been so good to have a chat.
Wonderful. Well, you take care, Peter. I look forward to catching up with you somewhere on the club industry circuit, but wishing you all the very best for your book. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Michelle. Bye.